Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. And today I am joined by my friend, mentor, teacher, Hari Kirtana Das. I'm really excited to have him with me today. I'm going to be interviewing him a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita, which is something that I had the privilege and joy to study with him personally. I did a private yoga teacher training course with Hari, and we studied the Gita for about a year together. And yeah, it's just become a really special text in my life. And there's a lot of carryover that's really relevant to us as students or people who are interested in astrology. And it's something that I reference a lot in my talks. Hari has an upcoming course on the Gita that I highly recommend. And so we're also going to be plugging his course today. So thanks for being here, Hari. I really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be able to
Yeah.
spend some time with you.
Yeah, totally. I got into bhakti yoga for people out there who, obviously most people out there now know me as the guy who does astrology and talks a lot about bhakti yoga. And I got into bhakti yoga because of Hari. So I'll just tell the brief version of this story. We had a yoga studio in DC for almost 10 years. Hari was on our staff as our yoga philosophy instructor in the yoga teacher training programs for, I think, all of those years, most of them. And he is someone who had a long background in studying and practicing bhakti yoga. And I didn't know even what that was. I just knew, hey, he's really smart when it comes to yoga philosophy, and really like the way that he teaches our students, and everyone loves him. And so then eventually, when I wanted to deepen my own studies, I was looking for someone to study with more in a one-on-one setting. And my wife said, "Hey, have you read Hari's new book?" Of course, I know Hari because he's on our staff. I'm going to show you this book on the screen right now. So Hari had written a book, and it's an awesome book. This was back in 2017 that it came out, called "In Search of the Highest Truth: Adventures in Yoga Philosophy." I read this book, and it literally blew my mind. It's so hard to write a book that is short and profound about something as dense and ancient as yoga philosophy. That's just a layman's perspective, of course, but I was so taken by this and the perspective of the book, which a lot of which had to do with bhakti yoga, and drew on the Gita. So it was from this text, which I highly recommend that you all check out, In Search of the Highest Truth. You can find it on Amazon. That I just was like, okay, I want to go study with Hari. So then we started studying together, and one portion of what we did every week was to study the Gita together. Before we dive into what your course is about, because I really want people to know about the new course that you're offering and why I think it would be something that my audience would like a lot, especially because a lot of the way that I teach comes directly from people who've inspired me, like Hari and my guru and so forth. But Hari, first of all, how did the Gita and yoga philosophy or yoga in general come into your life, like originally, and then how did you develop a special relationship with the Gita?
The Gita itself showed up in my life when I was a teenager. I was just one of those kids who always had an interest in Eastern mysticism. I actually kind of wanted to be Dr. Strange when I grew up. And I had no problem believing that that sort of thing was possible, the idea of like astral dimensions and that sort of thing. And I just had an immediate attraction for Eastern spiritual and mystical philosophies. And so I first came across the Gita when I was probably about 16, I guess. First time I read it, I just couldn't wrap my head around it at all. But I had an attraction to it, so I tried again. And then I think I understood a little bit of it, but I didn't really accept it. And then the third time, I tried again because I still had an attraction for it. I still was convinced that there was, what I was looking for was hiding in here somewhere. And the third time, I had some help. I studied with a teacher and with a group of people who were dedicated to understanding, not just understanding the Gita, but living according to the Gita's teachings. And that's really what made the difference for me. And that was when I was about 21, so late 1970s.
And eventually that would lead you to actually becoming initiated in a bhakti tradition.
Yes. My name, Hari Kirtan Das, is not the name my parents gave me. It's the name that my initiating spiritual master gave me. It means the servant of the chanting of the supreme person who gives shelter along the path of devotional yoga. Proof once again that Sanskrit is a very concise language.
Yeah, yeah. You've taught the Gita for how many years now? It's got to be a couple decades.
Yeah, I mean, part of learning the Gita the third time was also learning how to teach the Gita. It's not recommended that one wait until one is perfect in one's knowledge, but rather that one shares one's realization according to one's understanding right from the get-go, because that actually helps us to understand it. If we have to articulate what we understand and what we realize, because the Gita is meant to be experiential knowledge, not just armchair philosophy, then it helps us to be clear on what it is we understand. So I started teaching the Gita relatively early on, and then on and off, really for almost the past 40 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And lately, now when I became a yoga teacher in 2009 here in Washington, D.C., and that's when I started doing yoga teacher training, because my background, having lived in an ashram and gotten a kind of training that's different from the usual yoga training that you get today, people ask me to come in and teach in yoga teacher training programs. So I've been teaching the Gita steadily since then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the core components of our YTT was typically you helping the students work through some of the chapters of the Gita, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And bringing the relevance of the Gita to present day, showing contemporary yoga students how and why a book that is said to be 5,000 years old still has relevance for our lives here and now.
Right. Give us the context of the Gita. Paint us a picture of what the Gita is about, and what kind of journey we might expect to go on if we read the Gita for the first time, or even people obviously who are returning to it will appreciate this too, I'm sure.
Well, most of the time, at least in my experience, people reading the Gita for the first time go on a journey of confusion. Because just getting out of the first chapter can be challenging. As you yourself know, there's a parade of names that are difficult to pronounce, impossible to remember, and you wonder how you're ever going to be able to read the Gita if you are supposed to keep track of all of these people. Fortunately, it's not necessary. So a lot of people get bogged down right at the get-go. And if they get into the second chapter, then the challenge is that there's a very, very revolutionary idea that's very contrary to what we assume to be true in the modern world, which is the idea that we are eternal spiritual beings having temporary material experiences, which implies that before we showed up in this life, there was a previous one. And when this one is done, there'll be another one. And modern culture, modern intellectual culture in particular, simply does not account for that. Even if we don't realize it, we don't really accept this proposition. And even if it sounds like it makes sense, there's still so much modern conditioning that goes against that idea that it's really hard to accept it and understand all of its implications. Once you get to the point of understanding the implications of that fundamental teaching upon which the rest of the teachings of the Gita are based, then you can really take a trip down the rabbit hole and see the world through the lens the Gita gives us, as opposed to looking at the Gita from the point of view of the lens that the world gives us. Very, very different and amazing, eye-opening journey that shows us a world that looks really, really different from the Gita's point of view.
Yeah, I remember I was at an astrology conference. People who watch this will know there's an astrology conference called NORWAC. It's the Northwest Regional Astrology Conference. And I had just started with Hari, and I was reading the Gita for the first time probably in 10 years. I had read it in graduate school. And I was rereading it, and I happened to meet someone at that conference who was there, and I had worked my way out of my little Cancerian shell and gone down to socialize. And this gentleman, his name is Tom. He was sitting there, and another colleague connected us. Said, "Oh, you guys are both into yoga." And he said, "What are you reading?" And I said, "Oh, I'm reading the Gita." And it turned out that he was studying Bhakti Yoga and basically the same tradition and so forth in Hong Kong. He happened to be here at this conference. He became not only a tight astrology buddy, but a Bhakti Yoga buddy. And we ended up meeting up when I went to India for the first time, and I ended up with Hari there. All of that is just to say this. I have also found, and I want Hari to weigh in, I want you to weigh in on this, Hari. I've also found that something about bringing the Gita into your life in a meaningful way, studying it with other people, reading it, taking it in, it starts to set off the synchronicities around you as well. My wife could say the same thing. It's a book that seems to open up a lot of doors in the mind and heart and start making interesting connections in life in general. Would you say that you've noticed that is that just me, Hari, or have you noticed that with students of the Gita in general, that it tends to just start making changes in your life even?
It definitely has the potential to be a mind-blowingly transformative experience, particularly when it is studied in community, or at least with a cohort, a group of other people who are also studying the Gita and looking at it from the point of view of the tradition from which the Gita comes, which is also an important factor that you mentioned. And that's one of the reasons why, when I thought about developing my next Gita course, that it had to have a community aspect to it. That is to say, I had to figure out a way for everyone who's taking the course to be able to speak to one another about their realizations without just me wah, 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 wah all the time. And so that's one of the things I've done with this course, is I've created a platform that supports everyone who takes the course, not only speaking with me, but speaking with one another and sharing insights and realizations. And that really makes a huge difference. It made a difference in your case. It certainly made a difference in mine. And so I thought that was a really important thing to add in this course.
Yeah, that's true. It's it's amazing how the association of other people who have a similar interest, what's going on, why am I here, what's the bigger picture, what's the purpose of life, what's my true nature. I mean, so many of the people who watch my astrology channel express regularly that they come to astrology as a way of deepening their spiritual life, or of inquiring about themselves and the nature of experience and reality. And I've long said in my channel, everyone listening will know that I sound like a broken record, which is that you really can't do astrology without pairing it next to some practices. And there's many. I don't necessarily prescribe any on my channel, but one of the practices that everybody on my channel knows that I have each morning is my mantra meditation. And along with that is reading one chapter of the Gita each day, because I think there's 17 total. Is that right, Hari?
18 chapters.
18 total. And most of them could be read, like maybe 10, 15 minutes. You could get through one chapter if you're reading it. And so, like, even, my wife and I will sit down and we'll just read a chapter together. And that has been such a huge blessing in my life, to have that practice to help me keep this bigger perspective of the cosmos, of the soul, of its relation to other souls and beings and our divine source. And to keep that perspective in mind as I'm doing astrology every day has been one of the best practices of my life. And it started because we had groups of people studying this together with Hari in our yoga studio for many years. And then finally, I started studying it with Hari and then started joining groups of people who were studying it more and more. And so the opportunity to study it with other people who are diving into this text, it can be conversational. You can have help from someone who's taught it for a long time. And by the way, when I would sit down with Hari each week, we would sit in he had a studio apartment at the time, and we would sit in the studio apartment on our like yoga mats, and we would read verses from the Gita, and he would literally just be like, "So what do you think?" And I would be like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You're asking me what I think about it." And then I could engage and ask Hari questions. And that contact with a teacher to work through a text, someone who's had a long lineage of teachers teaching them the text and has worked with friends and community for many, many years, is just really super valuable. So for all you guys out there who are listening, we're going to tell you more about the course and how you can get signed up and stuff like that. But I highly recommend checking out this course and getting involved, especially if you've never studied the Gita, because you won't find a better teacher for studying it for your first time. But also if you studied it but felt like you needed more guidance or more support or community or a different kind of space in which to experience it. So anyway, that's my plug for Hari. So my next question for you, Hari, is tell us a little about just almost like the literal context of the story, just so that people can almost like envision what this ancient yogic text is about. So there's Arjuna, there's Krishna. Could you just give a little bit of that context?
Sure. The Bhagavad Gita appears in as a chapter in a much longer work, the Mahabharata. And I know your regular listeners have heard you speak a little bit about this. And it's a drama, basically. There's intrigue, there's suspense, there's betrayal, there's action. There's really only one boring part of the Mahabharata when two guys just stop and sit and talk about philosophy for about an hour. And that's the Bhagavad Gita, which of course is the most famous part. But it's like that for a reason. The Gita is spoken at the pinnacle of the story, at the point where there's going to be a decisive battle between two factions in a family. All diplomatic options have been exhausted. And now there's nothing left to do but fight to see who's going to inherit the kingdom. So in a sense, the Bhagavad Gita is a solution to a political problem. And just after everyone's assembled on the battlefield and the whistles have blown and everything is about to start, everything stops. And that is when Arjuna turns to Krishna and says, I don't really think I should do this. It's kind of like, the team that came back all season long, getting to the Super Bowl, and then the kicker doesn't want to kick off the ball to start the game. And so in this case, it's something quite a bit more serious than a sporting event. It's a fight to the death between family members. And so it's just about the most intense situation you could possibly imagine. And that is what the Gita is actually for providing guidance on how to get through the most extreme of life's challenges from a position of knowledge and equanimity.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's every morning that I read a chapter before, my routine is typically to do my mantra meditation, a little bit of working out, and then I do my chapter of my Gita before I create my content for the day. So people who I get questions all the time in the chat box or in the email, like, you talk about your spiritual practice. What's it like in the morning? I like how you bring some spiritual elements into the astrology that you share. Where does it come from, et cetera? And I would say a huge amount of what inspires me every morning before I create my content is my chapter of Gita for the day, which is something that my guru recommends, just reading a chapter every day. So it really does help put things into perspective especially when you're going through really challenging things. Sometimes I've noticed as a parent, the most challenging thing is the mundane quality of everyday life too. Like every day is this battle with the mundane, with diapers and schedules and blah, blah, blah. And it's really good for that too. And I think that would be included in what Hari is saying about an extreme, that if your extreme is something that you're dealing with in and out every day, it can happen there. If you're going through something really traumatic and totally life-changing, it can apply there too. Would you say that's accurate, Hari?
I would say that's totally accurate. It's basically a guidebook for one's life, whether one is on a battlefield with weapons or a battlefield with diapers. It doesn't matter, because we all face different challenges. And the amazing thing about the Gita is that it is universally applicable to whatever kind of challenge you're facing. And that's one of the reasons why I would ask you, and I ask all of my students, whoever I'm working with, what do you think? Because I don't know your life, I know my life. I don't know what you think, I know what I think. I already know what I think, so now I want to know what you think. How does this work for you? How do you relate to this? And that's has always been my method, because I want to help people find the way in which the Gita is going to make a difference in their life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I couldn't have appreciated that more in working with Hari. When we would meet, like I said, it wasn't like I was being grilled or put on the spot, but it would be like, what are your thoughts? How are you processing this material as a regular point of interaction? And man, and then the other thing that, as Hari said, which is that there are opportunities that can come up as you're studying something like the Gita to share what you're learning with other people. It's like one of the best ways to actually integrate what you're studying. So, I remember early on talking to both my guru and Hari as well, and saying like, I'd like to incorporate some of what I'm learning into my YouTube channel where I talk about astrology, but I don't feel qualified. And the thing that came back was like, well, what do you love about the Gita? What do you like about it? What do you understand? And so, okay, well, here's what I like, understand, et cetera. Well, just incorporate that, And so it's a space too, where that idea that, you can only be one of the things I was really intimidated about with regard to like an ancient yogic philosophical text was, I'm not qualified. I'm not smart enough. I won't be able to comprehend or understand, or let alone explain to anyone what I'm learning or anything like that. And I had the complete opposite experience. It's very empowering.
No, that's really what counts, is not how much you know, but what is your realization about what you have heard?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to wait until we are Gita scholars to share our personal realization of whatever it is we have gained from our study.
Mm-hmm. Right. I want to share with
you. By the way, I just want to let everyone know that in terms of realization, I'm also a big fan of all of your bhakti broadcasts, or whatever kind of casts they are, because I regularly listen and draw a lot of inspiration from listening to you speak about bhakti on your channel.
Thank you. Yeah. I get big props to Hari for turning me on to bhakti, and also being the pathway through which I met my guru by Sheshika Dasa. And both Hari and my guru have been people who've just encouraged me to let it rip. Just try your best to teach it, keep asking questions, keep learning, but share what you're learning. with other people. And the spirit of this YouTube channel, really, if you look at the comment section every day on this channel, as all of you guys do, people are sharing what they're learning and sharing their insights and realizations as we live through the different planetary transits and so forth. So yeah, well, I want to put and now it makes me just a little bit more nervous knowing that you actually watch my stuff. But here is Hari's website, Hari Kirtana, hari-kirtana.com. We're going to put all of the relevant links for his upcoming Bhagavad Gita course into the description of this video, in the comment box as well. And if you're subscribing to my newsletter, you'll get all the information through my newsletter that goes out every day. But there's a lot of things that you can do to get involved with Hari and his work outside of the Gita class as well, including the book that I mentioned earlier in this video, In Search of the Highest Truth, Adventures in Yoga Philosophy. You can find on Amazon. But Hari has mentoring, speaking gigs, workshops, books that he's writing, etc. So make sure you check out his website. And then Hari, tell us a little bit about what the format of the class is like. How do you meet? When do you meet? When is it starting? Just give us a little bit of those details, if you don't mind.
Sure. We're going to start on Saturday, September 11th, and the live classes will run through Saturday, October 23rd. So that'll be every Saturday afternoon, 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But in addition to the live modules, which, by the way, will be recorded, and anyone who registers will have access to those recordings henceforth and forevermore until the end of the world or the end of the internet, whichever comes first. There'll also be some bonus Q&A and hot seat sessions. So opportunities for dedicated time to just ask questions and engage in conversation. And also for me to find out what's your realization and for you to share your realization with everyone. So that's the schedule. I'll also have a translation of the Bhagavad Gita to give everyone so that we're all looking at the same translation, and study guides and exploration guides. And like I said, a private forum for community discussion that will extend beyond the time frame of the live session. So even after the last live Q&A session that's scheduled, the community of people who are registering for the course will still be able to engage with one another in that community forum.
Okay, great. And are classes recorded if people can't make them live, or do people need to plan to take the time out? Everyone always will ask that.
Of course, yeah. No, every class and every Q&A session will be recorded. So everyone will have access to the recordings for as long as the internet lives, I guess.
Right. Excuse me. So it's how many weeks total did you say?
8 weeks.
8 weeks total.
Total live classes. Plus there'll be additional Q&A sessions after the end of the 8 classes and the community discussion that will extend out to the end of the year. Okay,
great. And then people can register on your website. We're going to have the link in the description below. There, I believe there's a discount for people who are watching this channel.
Yes, I have a special discount specifically for fans of Nightlight Astrology.
Okay, great. So we'll make sure we have that information in the description of this video as well. If people have questions and they want to ask a question about the series or anything, details about the organization or whatever, what's the best email address for people to get in touch with you by?
Hari, Hari, at hari-kirtana.com.
Right. We'll put that in the description as well, so you guys will have that. Really excited to hear and see how people who interact with my content every day end up enjoying the Bhagavad Gita. And I have no doubt that you will enjoy hanging out with Hari. So make sure that you guys check all of this out. Any last words that you want to share, Hari, before we go?
No, I think everyone's heard enough from me, at least for now. But I certainly hope that some of the folks who are following you here would be interested in joining me for this course. And thanks very much for your very kind words about me and our experience together, and for giving me the opportunity to hang out with you here and speak to your tribe.
Totally. Yeah. It was, it's good to have you here and to be able to share what's coming up with everybody. Again, everybody, make sure that you, check out Hari's upcoming course. I hope that even if you're not able to attend, consider checking out his book, In Search for the Highest Truth. And also, you can, even if you can't attend, you could always check out the Bhagavad Gita. Get a hold of a copy and take a look at it. If for whatever reason you can't attend the course, still highly recommended text either way. So, so at any rate, thank you, Hari, so much for being here, and we will see you all again soon. Everyone, take it easy.